If you travel east along National Route 55 through Kochi Prefecture, you'll reach the little town of Nahari. While once bustling with forestry, fishing, and silk production, the town today is rather quiet. However, this quiet exterior hides a wealth of history, including the Fujimura Silk Company Museum. So, you may know what silk looks like when it's been turned into a shirt or a scarf like this. But do you know what happens to it before it becomes like this? Let's find out. Hi, this is the Fujimura Silk Company Museum, founded in 2007 to promote and discuss the history of sericulture and silk production in the small coastal town of Nahari in Kochi, Japan. Silk production experienced a boom in Japan from around 1870 to 1940 and again from 1954 to 1964. And at its peak in 1900, Japan was second only to China in the exportation of silk. There were over 6,000 silk companies in Japan during this peak. These are chops, the trademark logos that silk companies attached to the bundles of silk thread before they were shipped abroad. The Fujimura Silk Company was established in 1970 by Fujimura Yonetaro, who also ran a whaling company and a lumber company in the area. Here you can see a variety of the machines that were used daily at the Fujimura Silk Company factory. During its heyday, the Fujimura Silk Company employed over 220 employees. Produced at this factory were woven into clothing used in ceremonies of the Japanese imperial household, as well as high-end companies like Hermes. The Fujimura Silk Company ceased operations in 2005 due to the decreasing demand for silk and the increasing use of synthetic fibers. So just how are raw silk threads created? It all starts with the silkworm. Here is the life cycle of the silkworm, from breeding to egg to worm to cocoon. Silkworms were domesticated around 3500 BCE in China. Sericulture was then introduced to Japan from China around 200 BCE. Once eggs have been laid by adult moths, they are watched carefully until they hatch, at which point the tiny, tiny silkworm larvae are moved into baskets filled with mulberry leaves, which is the only food that silkworms eat. As the silkworms grow larger, they go through several sleeps, and after their final sleep, they begin to spin their cocoons, at which point the process to create silk thread begins. Once the silkworms have cocooned themselves, the cocoons are shipped off to silk factories. Once in the factories, the cocoons are boiled to kill off the larvae inside. They are then dried and processed, selecting only the highest quality cocoons and removing any damaged or subpar ones. From there, the cocoons are boiled again and gently massaged with brushes to find the end of the thread of the cocoon. found, it's wound either by hand or by a reeling machine like this in order to twist the nearly invisible individual threads into a thicker thread of raw silk, at which point it starts to look like real silk thread. The raw silk threads must be forcibly stretched and dried in order to keep it flexible and strong. The raw silk is unwound from its reels and dampened, then rewound as it dries around large frames called skeins.
編作は今でも手仕事です。
The beginnings and end of the thread are tied together so they don't get lost. Then, the skeins of raw thread are tied with a cotton thread to prevent them from coming apart. Only then are the bundles removed from their skeins. The threads are then left in a hot, humid room to stabilize the moisture content before being twisted on this machine and bundled together. Last but not least, the factory trademark logo is then attached to this bundle. Bundles will undergo 2 government-mandated inspections and receive a grade before finally being shipped off to companies that will dye and spin the raw threads into fabric to be made into the finished products that you're all familiar with. I hope this brief glimpse into the world of silk has piqued your interest a little bit. If you're ever out in Kochi Prefecture, be sure to stop by Nahari to visit this museum and get an in-depth look at how silk was made in Japan.